Hello, brothers and sisters. We are up to another book here in our daily Bible reading, and I love reading the Word with you every single day. Praise Yah. And today we're going to be reading the introduction to the book of First Peter. So before we do that, we're going to open up with our prayer here, the Shema found in Deuteronomy 6:4-9. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad, Baruch Shem Kiro, Mahuto, Leolam Va'ed. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh is our Elohim, Yahweh is one. And you should love Yahweh with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And have these words which I command you this day be upon your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children. And speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you retire and when you arise. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and let them be frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. All right, so we are reading the introduction to First Peter, and we're looking here at the New Living Translation edition and what they have to say here in their introduction about First Peter. So if I disagree with it, I will let you know. Let's see here. Let me get my trusted bookmarker. There we go. Okay. But they do a pretty good job. So now for the book of First Peter, the purpose of this book was to offer encouragement to suffering Christians and or suffering believers. The author was Peter. Remember, these first and second century Christians were different than today's Christians. They were following the scriptures, not like the church today, which has become a man-made thing. So the author was Peter. The original audience here was the Jewish believers driven out of Jerusalem and scattered throughout Asia Minor. It was written approximately AD 62 to 64, possibly from Rome. The setting: Peter was probably in Rome when the great persecution under the Emperor Nero began. Eventually, Peter was executed for this persecution. Throughout the Roman Empire, believers were being tortured and killed for their faith, and the church in Jerusalem was being scattered. That's important, where you find these people. They were being killed for their faith. And the key people in this book here, or this letter, was Peter, Silas, and Mark. And the key places were Jerusalem, Rome, and the regions of Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia Minor, and Bithynia. So we look at this book, and what it says here is, it says, crushed, overwhelmed, and devastated, torn. These waves of feelings wash over those who suffer, obliterating hope and threatening to destroy them. Suffering has many forms of physical abuse, debilitating disease, social ostracism, persecution. The pain and anguish tempt a person to turn back, to surrender, to give in. Many first century followers of Yeshua were suffering and being abused and persecuted for being in and obeying Yeshua. Beginning in Jerusalem at the hands of the Jewish brothers, the persecution spread to the rest of the world. Wherever believers gathered, it climaxed when Rome determined to rid the empire of the believers, those who would not bow to Caesar. Peter knew persecution firsthand. Beaten and jailed, he had been threatened often. He had seen fellow Christians die and the church scattered, but he knew Yeshua, and nothing could shake his confidence in the risen Messiah. So Peter wrote to the church scattered and surrounding for the faith, giving comfort and hope and urging continued loyalty to Yeshua. Peter begins by thanking Yahweh for salvation. He explains to his readers that the trials will refine their faith. They should believe in spite their circumstances, for many in past ages believed in Yahweh's plan of salvation, even the prophets of old who wrote about it, but didn't understand it. But now salvation has been revealed in Yahshua. In response to such a great salvation, Peter commands them to live holy lives, to reverently fear and trust Yahweh, to be honest and loving, and to become like Yeshua. Yeshua the Messiah, as the living cornerstone upon whom the church is built, is also the stone that was rejected, causing those who are disobedient to stumble and fall. But the church built upon the stone is to be Yahweh's royal priesthood. Next, Peter explains how believers should live during difficult times. Believers should be above approach, imitating Yeshua in all social roles. Masters and servants, husbands and wives, church members and neighbors. Yeshua should be our model for obedience to Yahweh in the midst of the great suffering. Peter then outlines the right attitudes to have about persecution. Expect it. Be thankful for the privilege of suffering for Yeshua and trust for the deliverance. Next, Peter gives some special instructions. Elders should care for Yahweh's flock. Young men should be submissive to those who are older. And everyone should trust Yahweh and resist Satan. Peter concludes by introducing Silas and by sending personal greetings, possibly from the church in Rome and from Mark. When you suffer for doing what is right, remember that following Yeshua is a costly commitment. When persecuted for your faith, rejoice that you have been counted worthy to suffer for your Messiah. He suffered for us. As he follows, we should expect nothing less. As his followers, we should expect nothing less. As you read 1 Peter, remember that trials will come to refine your faith. When they come, remain faithful to Yahweh. Now, the blueprint here for 1 Peter, there's 3 parts to the book. The first one is from 1:1 to 2:10, and it talks about Yahweh's great blessing to his people. And then we get into 2:11 to 4:19, which talks about the conduct of Yahweh's people in the midst of suffering. And then finally, we look at 5:1 to 14, which is the shepherding of Yahweh's people in the midst of suffering. That is the introduction here to the book of Peter, talking about salvation, persecution, Yahweh's family, the family life, and judgment. So now, if you'd forward with me to the next video, which is 1 Peter. Thank you.